Hello, and welcome back to the Follow Your Spark podcast. It's your host, Gina Casbarro here, and I'm coming in for a very special solo episode today to talk about one of the biggest things that I find that holds people back from going after their goals. And that is money. This topic is so important to me because I feel like now more than ever, we need people in this world who are willing to go against the grain, follow their purpose and passion, believe in their unique gifts, and share that with the world. And that often comes with following an unconventional path. Maybe it doesn't look like doing the traditional 9 to 5 route that's been the standard for decades. Or maybe it's breaking free from constantly worrying and attaching all of our value and worth to productivity and finally giving yourself time to pursue the things that matter to you. Either way, I find that there's a direct correlation between our relationship with money and abundance and our ability to break free from societal standards and external expectations so that you can actually live your most authentic, inspired life. So that is what inspired me to come on today and record this episode. In this episode, I'll share more of my own journey with money and abundance and what it looks like for me to go from that corporate job, steady paycheck life to transitioning to working for myself, and what obstacles and challenges came up along the way and what supported me most throughout that journey. At the end, I'll summarize the key obstacles that I see show up again and again in terms of money, both in my own life as well as for my clients, and what can support you to navigate that if you're experiencing the same thing. So if money is a stressor point for you, stick around. We are going deep today. It definitely feels a little bit vulnerable for me to share this because money often does, and we'll get into that. There's so much feeling and so many layers that go into our relationship with money. So thank you for being on this journey with me. Let's dive in. Okay, so my money journey. Let me take it all the way back and tell you about my grandparents. So, like many people my age, I'm in my late 30s, my grandparents lived feeling the impact of the Great Depression. My grandfather was very conservative around money, and that definitely got passed down through the generations. And if we go even further back, my great-grandparents came from Italy looking for a better life, and I'm sure they experienced levels of scarcity and fear around not having enough. So what did that look like in my lifetime? Like I mentioned, my grandfather was very frugal, very conservative. He was a car salesman. And even though he was definitely able to support and provide for his entire family, there was no splurging. There was no going out to fancy dinners. There was no taking vacations. It was all about how can we save all of the money that we have? And a lot of that energy translated to my father and in my own life. Thankfully, my father was always really good with money, and he taught me a ton about budgeting, about saving, about investing, and that frugal conservative energy also showed up in messages of don't take a shower too long, you're going to waste money, don't open the fridge for any longer than you need, you're going to waste money and resources, how much are you spending on those jeans? That kind of energy. So I feel like I interpreted that and created my own beliefs around I need to hoard money. I need to earn as much as possible and save as much as possible because that's what creates safety. And I'll share more about how that manifested in my own life over the years. So that's, layer one and the roots of my own money story. As I grew up, I developed habits that reflected that. I've been budgeting since I was a teenager, first on paper, then an Excel document. I am constantly keeping track of my resources. And that's also manifested as this constant tallying in my mind all the time, whether I'm purchasing a $5 cup of tea or an $100 pair of pants or whatever it is, this constant tallying. I must keep track of money. That became ingrained in me over the years through childhood and beyond. And like I said, I was always very conservative also of how can I earn as much money as possible and save as much money as possible. I was always living under my means. Even when I was a store manager at Lululemon and I was making a great salary, I was still living in a very small studio apartment in Baltimore with my boyfriend at the time, splitting rent of $650 a month, I believe. So I was maybe paying like three something in rent. So I was always saving a lot. And like I said, I'm grateful for a lot of the things I learned about money and that hoarding mentality, that scarcity, that internalized belief of fear that there might not be enough, it might run out, that didn't have such a great impact. So again, when I was at Lululemon, when I started realizing that I wanted to make a change and I wanted to pursue my own business, and I had just gotten my feng shui certification, I was thinking, I will build up my business at the same time as I'm working in this role as a store manager. And then once my business is thriving, I'll resign. And there was definitely this fear of, I can't make less money than I'm currently making now, even though I had a great cushion to rely on from all the saving I'd been doing my entire life. And then I came to a tipping point that I feel like I've heard from so many clients and friends share similar stories to this. And that moment was I was burnt out. I was in stress management counseling. I wasn't sleeping. My anxiety was through the roof. And it took that amount of pressure for me to finally say no more. And that's when I chose to resign from my position as store manager at Lululemon. And I went to working part-time for the company. And I moved in with a boyfriend at the time and was able to save money on rent and expenses as I was building up my business. So after I resigned from my position as store manager, I launched my own business. I was working both at Lululemon part-time as well as building up my business. It was during that time that I began to invest in myself and my business in a big way for the first time. I had never spent tons of money in this way on myself. I joined 2 mastermind programs. I hired coaches. I joined other courses. And even though there was an initial fear of like, I'm spending a lot of money here, I came back to what did I believe about this investment? What did I believe about what I was going to get in return for investing this money? And what was the dream I was working towards? And was it worth it? And being able to catch myself when I was judging myself for spending all this money and reminding myself that it often takes money and investment to start businesses. That's not a problem. So many businesses take a couple years to break even, let alone become profitable. And so many businesses, if we think about Silicon Valley or whatever it is, are getting funds from investors, and it takes capital to create something. So when my mind wanted to judge me for the first 2 years of investing more money in my business than I was making, I came back to these beliefs and reminders and thinking about, do I have judgment for corporations who do this, who invest in their businesses with the vision in mind of what they're building? No, I don't think they're stupid or think that, anything else about that. So it was slowly beginning to build this belief in myself that I was worth investing in and that my dreams were worth investing in. And also being able to slowly deprogram what I feared other people thought of me. So, I went from being like the top of the ladder at Lululemon. I had worked so hard to become a store manager. It took me, 6 or 7 years to reach that position, to then go back to the beginning of building something and let go of what I thought people were going to think of me, what I thought people were going to think of how much money I was making, how much money I was spending. There was a lot, like I said, of layers wrapped up in that. And it took a lot of presence to begin to even notice them. So I did that dance for about 2.5 years of working part-time for Lululemon and working on building my business. And in that time frame, I also separated from that partner, moved out, was thinking about purchasing a home in Baltimore for the first time. And then I got the idea to go on a year-long solo road trip. And that was another huge tipping point moment in my journey and relationship with money and abundance. So 3 months into this road trip, I was on a retreat at Cortes Island in Canada with my teacher, Jamie Alvarez Acosta, who I had just met for the first time, who I've been on an incredible spiritual journey with for the past 3 years now, which I can't believe. Anyways, I met him for the first time on this retreat, and I remember having this like panic attack. I was 3 months into the trip, and for the first 3 months, I had these plans. I had places to be by a certain time in the trip. And at that point in September, for the rest of the year, the next 9 months, nothing was planned. And that unknown future laying ahead of me just hit me so hard. And the idea that I had just spent the past almost 10 years working for a company, getting a steady paycheck, earning money, being productive, I wasn't living that life anymore. And I freaked out in the sense of, oh my gosh, what am I worth if I'm not earning money? What's my value to this world? Like, what am I doing here? I was just in such a state of panic and like existential crisis about what life was for and what I was for and what I was worth. And I just remember being with Jamie, sobbing, sharing these feelings. And I remember he said to me, he looked at me and was like, listen, you don't need anything. You don't need a job. You don't need an amount of money. You don't need anything to be worthy, to be valuable in this world. You are already that. You are already whole and worthy and valuable in this moment, no matter what. And that was hard to believe in that moment, I think of that trip as like stepping out of the matrix, stepping out of this programming of what life is supposed to look like, what we're supposed to be doing as adults, what it looks like to be responsible, what it looks like to be successful. All these beliefs, I just came so face to face with them in this moment where I wasn't doing that anymore. And it was this deep invitation to question what I believed about myself, what I believed about life, what I believed about work, about productivity, about money. So it was very much a beginning of another unfolding. And like I said, a tipping point moment in my relationship with money and abundance. Another big tipping point moment came later on in the trip. So I can't remember when, but at some point earlier that year or before I had left, whether I was, making a vision board or dreaming about something, I had this idea that, wouldn't it be nice if I had X amount of money in the bank, even while I was traveling? Like if I reached this high number in my bank account, like, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be magical? Wouldn't that be fun? And in October, 8 months into the trip or something, I can't remember now doing the math, but I remember looking at my bank account and having that much money in the bank and being like, wow. And it hit me that that amount of money didn't come from working. It didn't come from having a thriving business while I was traveling. Granted, I was working some while I was traveling. I was earning some money, and it definitely wasn't, crazy amounts. That wasn't the biggest focus of this trip. So when I reached this amount of money, I was like, wait, how did this happen? And it happened through one, investments. So a lot of the stocks, funds, etc. that I had invested in were having really big returns on investment, right? And the other one was I had received an inheritance that year while I was traveling. And when I saw that amount of money and thought about where that money came from, I started feeling immense feelings of guilt and shame that that's where the money came from, that the money didn't come directly from me and my work and how productive I was being and how hard I was working. And again, those thoughts of what are people going to think of me if they knew this is where I received money from this year? And again, noticing all of those limiting beliefs, all of those feelings get brought up to the surface. And it was again an invitation to look at that, to notice that and be aware. How do these thoughts leave me feeling? Are they serving me? Do I want to believe them? Are they supportive? What else could I believe instead? Which brings me to the next and most recent lesson I feel like I've been learning about money and abundance. which is about not looking for the feeling of safety and security externally. So when I came back from my road trip, which was over 2 years ago now, which feels crazy, my business has been growing ever since. It's actually doubled every year since I first opened my doors, which is great. And I found that my sense of safety and security was very tied to how much money I was making in this particular moment. So if I signed a new client that month, amazing. I felt safe. I felt like everything was working. I felt like I was provided for. And then if I didn't sign a client the next month, boom, it was these feelings of, oh my gosh, I'm going broke. I'm going to be homeless. What am I doing? This immense feeling of this is not safe. This is not secure. This is not dependable. And I realized that those feelings had nothing to do with the amount of money I actually had in the bank. I could have very similar amounts of money in the bank and feel drastically different. So I was beginning to realize that I was counting on external circumstances to make me feel safe versus being able to find that sense of safety, security, and empowerment and belief internally, no matter what was going on in my life or my business in that particular moment. And learning how to do that has made a massive difference in my life. So that's a little bit of my money journey. Now I want to share with you some of the biggest themes I've seen across my life, as well as what shows up for so many of my clients and friends, and what you can do if you're navigating the same thing. Challenge number one is holding on to stories of lack, fear, and scarcity that may have been passed down through family members or ancestors. We all have this story of money, and what our parents think about money, what our ancestors think about money, what our society thinks about money, all of that seeps into our own beliefs in some capacity. So if you're noticing that you have some money beliefs that aren't serving you, that feel like they have been passed down, here's what you can do. I definitely see coming from a mind, body, spirit approach. What I mean by that is, number one, working with the mind. You can examine the beliefs that your family has shared with you about money and notice if you believe those things to be true. Begin to question them. See if you can see them from a different perspective and ask yourself if it's still supporting you to believe that. And if they're not, you can work on rewriting new thoughts and new beliefs that do serve you and how you want to think about money. Next in that mind, body, spirit approach is working with the body, noticing the feelings that come up for you when you think about spending money, when you think about receiving money, when you think about people who have money, when you think about people who don't have money. All these programmed beliefs. How does it make you feel? What do you notice in your body in regards to money? And begin to hold space for those feelings. Acknowledge them. Oftentimes fear will show up because it's trying to keep us safe. So if we have a deeply rooted belief that it's not safe to spend money and fear comes up, you can feel those feelings in your body, hold space for them, acknowledge them, thank them for trying to protect you, and then also let them know you're ready to do things differently. You're ready to believe something different about money. You're ready to feel these feelings and not let them stop you. And then the spirit approach. When it comes to past programming, stories from family, stories from ancestors, these imprints can leave energetic ties to us. So through meditation, through energetic practices, you can work on cutting these cords, cutting these ties so that they don't have their hold on you anymore. And you can begin to release them again on that mind, body, spirit level, all three, so that you can choose for yourself how you want to think about money, what you want to believe about money, how you want to feel about money. So that's challenge number one. When you hold on to stories, feelings of lack, fear, scarcity that have been passed down through the generations, and the solution is beginning to rewrite those on a mind, body, spirit level. The second challenge that I see frequently is a scarcity mindset, and this can show up no matter how much money you have in the bank and can result in a fear of investing in yourself or your dreams. So what's the solution? Okay, I want you to think of something that you want to invest in, or you could see yourself wanting to invest in, and imagine it costs an amount of money that would feel uncomfortable for you to spend. So take a moment, think about what that is now. Imagine how much money that would be that would feel uncomfortable for you to spend, that your brain would immediately tell you, oh no, I can't afford that. If you are experiencing something like that, the first thing to do is to ask yourself, why does this matter to you? Why does buying that piece of furniture or going on that vacation or investing in that coach or program or spiritual mentor, why does that matter to you? And then ask yourself, what would the impact be if you did spend money on that? If you took that vacation, if you bought that product, if you bought that thing, if you invested in yourself or your personal growth, what would the impact be now? And what would the impact be a year from now, 5 years from now, for the rest of your life? So when you think about this impact, really dig in and see, would buying that thing, would investing money in whatever that is, leave you feeling happy, joyful, fulfilled, healthy, excited in the moment? Would it help you to feel that way long term? Really examine that. And for me, this is why I spend the most money on personal development, on coaches, on spiritual programs, on spiritual containers. It's why I've been working with Jamie, the person that I mentioned earlier in this podcast, for the past 3 years. Because when I invest in myself and my own personal growth and development, that's when I learn new tools and build up my own internal resources that can leave me feeling happier, healthier, more joyful forever. So the return on investment for personal development feels massive for me. And that's because my values are connected to growth, are connected to learning. They're deeply embedded in that. For you, it might be different. So again, asking yourself, what would the return on investment be if I spent my money on this? And then ask yourself, is it worth it? Is that worth it to you to spend your money in that way? So that's the first part. Second part of this is to do a reality check, because so often when our brain tells us, oh no, I can't afford that, it may or may not be true. It may just feel scary to invest in that for a variety of reasons, and you may actually have the money in the bank. So doing that reality check and really seeing, what is the state of my finances? Do I have that amount of money? Do I have it in my checking account? Do I have it in my investments? Do I have it available to me in some other way? Really looking to see, is it true that I don't have that money? Because it's very different to say, I have the money, I just don't choose to spend it on this, versus I don't have the physical money, access to it in this moment whatsoever. Those are two very different things. So being able to do the reality check and see, what is the state of your finances? And a lot of people can feel fear around doing that. And if that's you, go back to that mind, body, spirit approach from the last one, and take a moment to feel your feelings, take a deep breath, remind yourself it's safe to look at your finances, to be present with your finances, and keep going. So do the reality check. See, is it true that you do or don't have access to that money? And if you do have that money, then notice, what is your brain telling you about spending that money? Again, go back to that thought work practice I shared. Notice, what are those thoughts? What is your brain telling you about spending that money? Are they connected to beliefs from your past, beliefs from your family? Are those thoughts serving you? How do they make you feel? And then see, what else could be true? What else do you want to believe that could support you in this moment? And then if you don't have the money, ask yourself, are you willing to be resourceful to create it? Are you willing to save? Are you willing to see what other ways you could generate money? Again, notice what you think about yourself and your circumstances as you go. So if you're telling yourself, I'm broke and I'll never be able to afford that, that's going to have an impact. Versus if you tell yourself, I don't have the money yet, and I'm open to receiving it. I'm open to get creative to see how I might be able to generate it. That creates a new space for abundance to flow in. The third challenge that I see all the time, especially with women, is attaching your value or worth to your job, to your income, to your bank statement, or to your productivity. If you're feeling that way, it's again about bringing awareness to the thoughts that are underneath it, to the way those thoughts make you feel, and beginning to question, beginning to look at that and see, is that true? Is that true that I'm not worth anything if I'm not working? Is it true that I'm not a valuable member of society or my family if I'm not producing income in this moment? And if you don't want to believe that, ask yourself, what else could be true? And see, how might it be true that I'm worthy and valuable no matter what? No matter whether I'm working at this particular moment in my life or I'm not. No matter whether I'm making the most money I've ever made or I'm starting a new business venture and I'm feeling supposedly back at the bottom, whatever it is. How does none of that matter? How does none of that impact your worth and value in this world? Journal on that and really build up that belief. And if it feels hard to believe that about yourself, think about if a dear friend that you loved came to you with the same sentiment and the same fear, and they were like, oh my gosh, I lost my job. I'm not working in this moment, and I feel like I'm worthless. I feel like I have no value, and they're expressing these fears. What would you tell them? Would you agree with them and say, yeah, that's true. You're definitely not worth anything if you're not making money? I seriously doubt that you would say that to a dear friend. And I find that oftentimes it can be easier to think about what we might tell other people if it feels challenging to believe that about ourselves. And it can be a really powerful perspective shift. So if it feels hard to rewrite these limiting beliefs thinking about yourself, see what you could believe about someone else that you loved and how that might also be true about yourself. And the fourth challenge that I see come up so frequently is counting on an external job, person, or amount of money in the bank in order to feel safe, sufficient, or abundant. The solution for this is, first of all, understanding what actually makes you feel safe and secure and abundant. Because it's very easy to think that, oh, when I have a corporate job, when I'm making X amount of money, that's safe. I have a steady paycheck every week. I know exactly what I'm earning. I can depend on that. And then there's fear that comes in that if I lose that, then I won't be provided for. It's this attachment to this one source being where your funds come from, where your safety comes from, where your ability to support yourself or your family comes from. And being able to again ask yourself, is that true? And recognizing that our feelings, the feeling of safety, the feeling of security, the feeling of sufficiency or abundance, those don't come from external circumstances. They come from how we feel about our circumstances. There could be a millionaire out there who has a lavish lifestyle, who, went from making $3 million to $1 million, and all of a sudden they feel completely unsafe because they weren't making as much. Versus for someone else, if they were to make $1 million, that would feel like winning the lottery. It's completely different, and it's all contextual based off of how we think about our circumstances. So instead of thinking that this job is providing for me, without it, I'll go broke, or this person is my source. Without them, without this relationship, I won't be able to support myself. The first thing to do is to learn how to create feelings of safety, sufficiency, and abundance within yourself. Because when you're feeling that way, when you're feeling grounded, when you're feeling secure, when you're feeling sufficient, that's when you are more resourced and capable to have access to ideas and inspired action that can help you support yourself. So the way that you build these feelings is to ask yourself, how could it be true that I'm safe in this moment? How could it be true that I have everything I need right now? And even if you have debt, even if you have bills coming in, to be able to remind yourself, if you are blessed enough to have a roof over your head, to have access to fresh water, to have access to food, that you are actually okay in this moment, right now, in this particular moment, you are safe. You are sufficient. Your needs are met in this moment. So asking yourself, how could that be true? And really feeling what it feels like, even if you are simply taking a deep breath and focusing on the air that is coming into your lungs. If we are alive and breathing, we have access to that. So if it's nothing other than that, reminding yourself that you are sufficient in this moment because you have fresh air, because you have water, and really feeling your nervous system calm and settle when you remind yourself of that. And the same goes for the feeling of abundance. Again, we often think that feeling of abundance comes from money. It comes from clients. It comes from having a certain income. And truly, we can feel abundant in any moment. And again, it's the feeling of abundance that creates more abundance externally. So for me, I've got these beautiful flowers on my desk right now that I'm looking at, and flowers always make me feel abundant. Looking at the colors, remembering the incredible creative power of nature, all of the blessings that I'm surrounded with simply by living on planet Earth, and really feeling what abundance feels like in your bones, in your energy, and letting that energy of abundance emanate from you. So that's step one, being able to create and generate feelings of safety, security, and abundance for yourself, no matter what is going on externally. The other big part of this for me is on a spiritual level. It's about believing in the power of the universe, the power of my higher self, the power of my heart to support me, and letting go of this need to figure everything out with my logical mind and believe that I am supported in this life and that there's so much more available to me than just what I can think about or imagine with my logical mind. And it's about remembering that, again, one client, one person, one job, that's not where my money comes from. That's not the source of abundance. This is an infinitely abundant universe. There are all kinds of ways for abundance to flow to me and through me. And there is not just one way or one source. And I don't have to feel bad or guilty about where that abundance comes from, or desperate or graspy that if I, sign 3 clients this month and 0 clients the next month, I don't have to get into a panic, because again, no client is responsible for my level of abundance. And when I reconnect to this inner knowing that I am deeply supported and have access to so many resources beyond my imagination, I can trust myself, I can trust my heart, I can trust the universe to guide me, I can trust my own innate sense of creativity, I can trust my own capacity, so that no matter what happens, I can develop a belief in myself that I am resilient, that I am supported, that I am intuitively led, and that no matter what happens, I will be able to navigate it to the best of my ability. And it doesn't matter where it comes from. And like I said, that has made such a tremendous difference for myself in my own life and business, to let go of this feeling of graspiness or attachment to any amount of money or any client, and trust that when I show up in service, when I follow my purpose and passion and gifts, I can trust that I will be supported. If I show up to serve in this world, I will also be served in my own life, which again brings me back to the reason why I wanted to record this podcast. Because when we can transform our relationship to money, to abundance, to feeling supported, then you have so much more courage and capacity to take a risk, to believe in yourself, to take a leap of faith, to be willing to do things differently in order to live a life that deeply serves you and deeply serves this world. So if money is something that holds you back, that you are ready for a breakthrough in, I want to share also about a really incredible program that I'm excited to launch. It's an 8-week group coaching program starting September 30th, and it is connected to a book that has made a profound difference in my life. It's called It's Not Your Money by Tasha Silver. In this 8-week group coaching program, we are going to dive into all the practices that I shared in this podcast and more. And I know it is going to be a deeply transformative journey that unlocks a whole new relationship with money and abundance in your life, so that you don't have to be in a constant state of fear, anxiety, and worry, and you can feel more empowered, capable, and guided on your journey. So if that speaks to you, go to ginacasbarro.com/awakening-abundance to learn more and join us. All right, my friends, that's all I have for today. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.